My name is Lauren Mitchell, and the last thing my father ever said to me before my brother's engagement party was that I'd embarrass the family if I showed up. I was standing in the hallway, coffee in hand, when his voice cut through the house like a blade. If you walk into that ballroom, Lauren, you'll make us all look small. I didn't argue. I just said, then it's a good thing I'm not the one pretending to be big. He thought I didn't belong with people like the Harringtons, Daniel's fiance's family. Owners of half the luxury hotels in Florida. They're elite, he told me, straight-faced, as if the word itself meant holy. You won't know what to say, how to act. I smiled, because he didn't realize I already spoke the language his elites depended on. Every algorithm behind their booking systems, every revenue model that kept their resorts alive, carried my quiet fingerprints. But to him, I was still the misfit daughter, the one who never learned how to shine. 80-full. When my mother asked me to stay home, she tried to soften it. It's not personal. Sweetheart, it's strategy. I asked. Whose strategy? Theirs or yours? She looked away. That silence told me everything, how much they valued image over blood, surface over substance. I poured another cup of coffee, tasting the bitterness they'd left behind, and decided not to explain a thing. They didn't want me near the party, near their golden sun, near the world they thought was above me. What they didn't know was that the very empire they worshipped was standing on the code I built in my small apartment. And when those glittering doors opened that night, my name was already waiting for them inside, carved into the foundation of their perfect lie. The invitation came in gold foil, thick as gilt, my brother's name embossed beside the Harrington crest. My mother placed it on the counter like a relic and said, "We only have room for immediate family." I stared at her until she added, "Meaning the ones who represent us well." My father didn't look up from his phone when he said, "Let's not make this harder than it has to be. Lauren, just sit this one out. Don't." I asked if they were embarrassed by me or afraid of me. My mother sighed. The kind of sigh meant to end a conversation, not answer it. "It's just optics," she said. "People at that level notice everything." I told her. "Then they'll notice how quickly you traded your daughter for a photo." Eyes. Daniel called later that night pretending to care. "You know how Dad is," he said. "He just wants everything perfect." I asked, "Perfect for who?" He hesitated, then mumbled something about the right impression. I laughed and told him, "You're marrying a brand, not a person." He didn't deny it. When I told them I wasn't hurt, only amused. My father warned, "Don't twist this into drama." I said, "I'm not twisting anything. You already bent the truth until it snapped." He tried to sound reasonable, telling me, "Some people just don't fit certain rooms." I asked him quietly, "Whose room do you think you're standing in when you say that?" My mother tried one last time to sound kind. "You know we love you. Lauren, we just need to think of Daniel's future." I answered, "Then think of it. I'm not in your picture anyway." She blinked, confused, not realizing I meant it literally. A few hours later, I saw a family group photo uploaded by Daniel, my parents smiling under chandeliers. The caption reading, "So proud of our family." I stared at it for a long time. They had cropped me out completely. Even from the background, no trace left. As if I'd never been there at all. I closed the app. The silence in my apartment heavier than any insult. And whispered to myself, "They'll see me again, but not the way they expect." Oh, the email came just after midnight. Subject line, "Year-end recognition." It was from Graham Harrington himself. And for a second, I thought it was a mistake. Then I read the first line. Lauren, your system has increased our revenue by 40% in 6 months. I stared at the screen, rereading the number until it felt like air was leaving the room. He wrote that they were hosting a celebration for partners who had helped rebuild the company and wanted me there in person. You've been a silent force, he said. But it's time people see the face behind the numbers. I hesitated before replying, asking if he knew who I actually was. Graham's answer came quickly. I don't care where you come from. I care that you turned our losses into life again. For the first time in years, I felt something sharp and clean in my chest, respect without conditions. I typed a short response. Just one line, I'll be there. Then I closed my laptop, the glow fading across the room, and sat with the quiet power of knowing that while my family was trying to erase me, someone else was engraving my name in gold. A few days later, Graham called. His voice was warm, steady, the kind of tone my father never used with me. We're building a display to honor the people who saved us, he said. Your name will be on it. I asked, you really think anyone cares about the person behind the data? He laughed softly. They will when they realize that person changed everything. When I hung up, I didn't tell a soul. My parents were busy talking about tuxedos and photo booths, planning their grand arrival in Miami. I was planning something quieter, just showing up. No confrontation. No spectacle. Only truth, waiting in plain sight. I looked at the invitation Daniel had sent weeks earlier and traced the Harrington crest at the top. The same logo printed across every system I had rebuilt line by line. That night, I whispered to myself what I had known all along. Power doesn't need noise to be real. It grows in silence, builds in patience, and waits for the exact moment when truth walks in wearing its own calm face. The week before the gala felt like two worlds spinning on separate clocks. My parents moved through theirs with loud excitement, debating fabrics, hotel suites, and which wine would impress the Harringtons most. My mother said, "This isn't just a party. It's a statement." My father replied, "Then let's make sure it says success." Their version of victory came in silk and photographs. Mine came in silence. While they compared cufflinks and booked flights, I ironed a simple gray suit and printed a badge that read, Strategic Partner, L. Mitchell. I didn't need to shine under chandeliers. I only needed to stand where truth would find me. When my mother texted me a photo of the Miami ballroom setup, she added, "Wish you could see it in person." I typed back, "Don't worry, I will," and left it at that. They spent days perfecting their image, rehearsing small talk they thought could buy belonging. My father told Daniel, "Remember to thank the Harringtons for this opportunity." Daniel answered, "I will. They already love me." I almost pitied how easily they mistook proximity for power. They were flying toward a fantasy built on the very work they had dismissed as meaningless. On the morning of their departure, my mother kissed my cheek and whispered, "Behave while we're gone." I smiled and said, "Always," after their car pulled away. I stood in the quiet, listening to the echo fade like a curtain closing. Two worlds, one chasing applause, the other preparing to speak without saying a word. When I placed the badge into my bag and checked the flight details Graham's assistant had sent, I felt no need for revenge. Only balance. Some truths don't explode, they unfold. Steady and inevitable, waiting for the right room to echo in. The Miami air felt thick with money and expectation, the kind my parents confused with prestige. As I checked in under the title Strategic Partner, the attendant smiled politely and said, "Welcome, Miss Mitchell. Mr. Harrington is expecting you." I nodded, knowing the irony would soon unfold on its own. The ballroom shimmered with glass and gold, every surface reflecting people who believed they were untouchable. When Isabel spotted me near the registration desk, her eyes widened slightly before she composed herself. "You're Lauren Mitchell," she said quietly, as if naming something powerful. I answered, "That's what the badge says." She smiled. "Not out of politeness, but recognition. You're the one who built the system that saved us," she said. "I just connected a few numbers," I replied, but she shook her head. "No. You changed the math for all of us." Daniel appeared beside her a moment later. His charm turned up like a spotlight. "You two have met?" he asked, feigning surprise. Isabel glanced at him, then at me. "Just now," she said. Though technically, Lauren's work introduced her long before this. He didn't catch the edge in her voice. "Well, small world," he said. I looked at him and answered, "Smaller than you think." My parents entered soon after, scanning the room like pilgrims in a cathedral. My mother whispered, "It's more beautiful than I imagined." My father adjusted his tie and said, "Stay close to the Harringtons. This night matters." I wondered what they'd say if they realized their daughter had already been part of the foundation they were worshipping. For now, I stayed where I was. A quiet equation written into their success story. Isabel leaned closer and said softly, "My father will want to meet you before the program begins." I asked if he knew who I was. "He knows exactly who you are," she replied. "He said anyone who can rebuild a system from ashes deserves a place at the front." I thanked her, keeping my voice even. Behind her, I could see my family moving closer to the Harringtons, trying to blend in, unaware that the truth was already circling them like light waiting to reveal a shadow. When Graham stepped onto the stage, the room quieted under the weight of his voice. "Tonight," he began, "we celebrate not just family, but the people who held this company together when the world stopped turning." My parents stood near the front, smiling like they had built it themselves. Then he gestured toward the far wall lined with framed photographs. "Each face here represents a turning point," he said, "and one of them changed everything." "Two are." He paused, eyes settling on me before turning back to the crowd. "Meet the strategist who rebuilt our foundation, Lauren Mitchell." The applause hit like a wave. My mother's hands froze mid-clap. My father blinked as if he'd misheard. And Daniel whispered, "What the hell?" I caught his stare and said quietly, "You should listen. It's about me this time." Graham continued. "Her system brought us back from the brink. She understood the numbers when others only saw losses." My mother leaned toward my father and hissed, "She can't be the same, Lauren." He whispered back, "Of course she is. Look at her." I watched them struggle to smile as cameras turned their way. Isabel glanced at me and said softly, "Now they see you." I answered, "They always could. They just refused to." I have a nude. Daniel reached me through the crowd, his tone sharp beneath the polite music. "You didn't think to mention you worked with them?" I met his glare and said, "You didn't think to ask." He laughed under his breath, the kind of laugh that hides panic. "You planned this," he said. "No." I told him. "You did. The moment you tried to erase me." My father approached, his voice shaking but still trying for authority. "You could have told us," he said. "We would have prepared." I looked at him and answered, "Prepared for what? To pretend you were proud?" My mother whispered. "Lauren, please." "Not here." I smiled faintly. "Where better than the room you tried to keep me out of?" The applause swelled again as Graham thanked me from the stage, his words filling the space my family once claimed for themselves. They stood there, caught between pride and humiliation, unable to move. In that moment, The truth wasn't loud or cruel, it was simple. I didn't need to destroy them. I only needed to stand still while the light finally reached me. My mother was the first to speak once we were alone. "You made us look like fools," she whispered, her voice trembling. I answered, "No. I just stopped hiding so you could see yourselves." My father stepped forward, his tone sharp. "You humiliated us in front of everyone," I said. "I didn't humiliate anyone. The truth did that." "One," he clenched his jaw. "You should have warned us," he said. "We would have handled it differently." I met his eyes. "You mean you would have rehearsed the lie better?" My mother tried to sound calm. "We never meant to hurt you, Lauren. We just wanted what was best for Daniel," I said. "Then you got it, your perfect son standing in the shadow of the sister you erased." "Two," Daniel's voice broke through, low and desperate. "Maybe we handled it wrong. But you didn't have to do this." I asked. "Do what?" "Succeed?" he said. "You know what I mean." I smiled slightly. "I do. And that's why it's over." My father tried once more. "We're still family," I said quietly. "Then act like it next time you decide who's worth being seen." Their silence was the closest thing to honesty they'd ever given me. By the next morning, the story had already spread. News outlets posted photos from the gala. Headlines reading, "Lauren Mitchell, the strategist behind Harrington's comeback." When reporters approached my parents outside the hotel, one asked, "Is she really your daughter?" My father tried to smile. "Of course she is," he said. But his voice cracked on the word. My mother whispered, "We didn't know she was involved at that level." The reporter replied, "Strange. Considering the Harringtons said she saved the company." My father muttered, "She's always been private." I watched the footage later, their faces stiff as porcelain, every excuse breaking under the weight of what they'd denied. Daniel called that afternoon, sounding hollow. "You made us a headline," he said. I answered, "No. I made myself one." He tried to laugh. "They think I used you." I told him, "You did. You just didn't think anyone would notice." There was silence. Then a soft, "I didn't mean for it to end like this," I said. "It didn't end, Daniel. It just caught up." Dink. By evening, the world had already rearranged itself. Their perfect image collapsed under the truth they tried to bury. And all I had to do was stand still while it surfaced. Back in Austin, the quiet felt different, less like absence, more like peace. I watched the morning light spill across my desk, the same place where every line of code had once been written. Graham sent a note that read, "You reminded us what resilience looks like." And Isabel added, "Some people build legacies without ever asking for permission." I smiled, not out of pride but relief. A week later, my parents mailed a letter. My mother's handwriting was shaky. "We're sorry for how we made you feel," it said. "We just didn't understand what we were looking at." I didn't reply, because some apologies are better left as closure. Instead, I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer, beside old notebooks filled with half-finished plans that suddenly didn't feel small anymore. When people ask if I forgave them, I tell the truth. Forgiveness wasn't the point, freedom was. I learned that silence can be armor, and that peace sometimes sounds like your own name spoken with certainty. Standing by the window, I whispered. They finally saw me. But what mattered most was that I had seen myself first. Some stories don't end in triumph, they end in clarity. Thank you for staying with me until the end of my story. If you've ever been made to feel invisible, remember that your worth doesn't vanish just because someone else fails to see it. Let success speak quietly on your behalf. Subscribe, and keep listening to stories that remind you of your own strength.